Oh, hello there. After a long, hard day at work, I like to sit back, kick back, relax, and have a look at a really old Terrahawks catalogue to see just how many of these I've now been able to collect 40 years on. And the answer is quite a few of them, actually. Let's have a look, shall we? So here we are. Welcome to Christmas, circa 1983 or so. This is pretty much, the full range of the big Terrahawks toys that were available as part of the Terrahawks line back in the day. Now, I have slightly jumped the gun here in that I haven't done an individual video for the Treehawk here, but this is the first time I've actually assembled all of the ones that I've picked up, and it's taken me a good solid year. The Treehawk Spacehawk Hawkwing 3 box was the first one that I picked up from Doncaster at the end of last year in 2023. And the others I've just sort of come to gradually. The one that took me the longest to get, well, ironically, it was actually the Treehawk. The Treehawk I got last in a box, but I've had loose examples over the course of the year. But the Battlehawk was by far and away the hardest to get, A, complete, and B, in a box. But A often equals B for these purposes, because you can't really get it complete realistically unless you get it in a box, because the little Terrahawk that sits on top of it is always missing otherwise. So let me run you through these quickly just so you get a rough idea. But let me first actually show you the catalogue, because this is an interesting, one of these random things I picked up off eBay, which is just this, and it does exactly what it says on the tin. So this is a Bandai sort of informational leaflet for, I think, for retailers who wanted to actually order the line, which is quite interesting in and of itself. But the quirky thing about this is that this Spacehawk probably isn't the small one that you could actually get. It might even have been a prototype of the big one that they never released. This is Zelda's, if you're unfamiliar, this is Zelda's Martian base that she builds from her ships. You couldn't buy that as a toy. So I don't know what that's doing on the front cover, because that's misleading as all heck in the first place. That's a plain Zeroid, which again, you couldn't get. So there are lots of sort of quirky things about this front cover. But it is a very nice capture of all the various things that you could get, of which I've picked up several, as you can see. Well, all of them, basically. However, this one is quite an interesting quirk, because the battle tank that's being shown there is this big one. And this big one is not the one that fits inside Battlehawk. But it does look to me as if it probably, well, I don't know. I mean, now that I've said that, I'm looking at it. It's hard to tell from just one direction, but actually, it looks to me like originally maybe they would have coloured. I'm going to retract that. I think that what's shown here is not this slightly larger battle tank. I think it's a differently coloured version of the battle tank that does in fact go into Battlehawk. But the real life one ended up with a black recovery bar, not an orange one, and it didn't have an orange engine block at the back there. It had a silver one. So at some point they must have changed their minds. So these might be pre-production images. And in fact, interestingly, I notice here as well that there are no stickers here. There are no Terrahawks logos on the images here. I'm pretty sure those are pre-printed, pre-applied Terrahawks logos, stickers that they put on the Battlehawk. So I think these are probably an example of where they've done the sort of the prototype for the for the toy, and they've used that in the images because that was what they had available to them at the time. So even this thing like this Action Zeroid here, he's got a yellow switch on him on the front there, but the real one was coloured silver there. So the interesting thing about that Action Zeroid, I'll show you in a moment, because I now know what his action is. But you know, so you'll have seen that I've managed to get the game there. I've got the Treehawk just in front of me here, and several other loose examples. Got a big Hawkwing up top here. The 3-set Zeroid Terrahawk, little Terrahawk here that comes on top of the Battlehawk there. So that is all that was listed here, and this is what they say about. There you go. Zelda will win unless you order the Terrahawk range now. So the order form is quite interesting. So you got six in a pack. This is what tells me this is for retailers. So you got 6 pieces in a pack, 12 pieces if you're going for the Battlehawk electronic game. Battlehawk diecast would have been £11. Oh, £11 trade each. Pack price £66 and 6 pence. Wow. So the Battlehawk was the most expensive of them. Then the Terrahawk, then the Treehawk, Action Zeroid, Hawkwing Plastic, slightly more expensive again. Treehawk Spacehawk Hawkwing was only £5.22, and that's one of the more expensive ones to get back again now. Wow. Carriage pay terms £150. Gosh. So it's just, I just like it because it's a quirky little bit of sort of retail history captured there, and why somebody had this available, I have no idea. But this is the joy of eBay, of course. Sometimes you just spot stuff that you wouldn't have thought would ever have survived for any apparent reason. But I don't think I've shown you that before, so that's it's nice to get that captured on the film. I'll just show you what this Zeroid actually does, because this is what I hadn't realised about him, is that he was described on that sheet as being clockwork, and that puzzled me. But the reason is, you can actually it kind of winds up. So if you do this, you're actually winding up a clockwork mechanism, and then when you pop him off like this, he actually rolls around quite more than you might imagine, because he's actually got a motor inside him that you wind up. So they're trying to emulate what they did what they could do in the series in terms of popping off their pedestals and rolling into action. But I thought that was really a neat idea, and I had no idea we did that until I'd read that, and I thought, I wonder if. So yeah, it's a fun little piece of action. I'm actually wondering if he's had his day now, because I can't seem to reattach him to his stand. Oh no, I can. No, he's fine. Also, I quite like this little because he can do this as well, like he would have done in the series when he was going to full power rolling mode. So it's a random little thing, and it confused me the first time when I got this one loose. I thought I was getting one of the smaller figures on a cart, sort of just loose. But in fact, there wasn't. I was getting the larger version of him. So let's begin by having a look at him, because that seems appropriate. So this one, he's the smallest of the boxes, but it just gives you an idea of sort of how they were being presented. Now, I don't know how sensible it was to do this as a flap, because when you come to stack them, unless you're stacking exactly the same box, they're going to sort of get in each other's way, and this gets damaged. But this one's nice and clean. It's in decent condition. The badge looks good. The badges sometimes fade, I think, if they've been exposed to light. But you can see that that's on the good solid polystyrene. But this, though, I mean, this is so breaky. How they've survived this long, I've no idea. But they give you these little sort of examples of graphics on the side of them and tell you what else you could get. But every single one of them includes this Spacehawk image, and you can't get it. It never came out. So all you could get was Treehawk, Hawkwing, Battlehawk, Terrahawk, and that was your lot, and the 3-pack. But they're quite good fun, and the other side of the box also gives you a bit more information on the characters or the ship. The Zeroids are fighting and reconnaissance robots commanded by Sergeant Zeroid. It's not Sergeant Zeroid at all. The Battlehawk can carry up to 100 Zeroids. That's accurate. He was Sergeant Major Zero, was actually the right name that they're looking for then. And this is copyright 1983, Anderson Bird Pictures Limited. So they all go on like that. So he's called the Action Zeroid. He's a good sort of twice the height probably of the actual small Zeroid that you can also get on a card. And then of course one of the more impressive ones, and this was actually used in the series apparently at times as a stand-in for the official Hawkwing model. But this, as you can see, I haven't adjusted the zoom. This is a considerably larger box. Actually, I think when I measured it the other day, it's probably the largest of the boxes actually. It's not quite as deep as Battlehawks, but it is big. And again, this is a really nice example. It's got virtually all of its missiles on a sprue, apart from one, which I think is already in the launcher on the wing. But these two pieces connect together to form the total Hawkwing. You can see that this badge has been exposed to sunlight. It's faded around the edges somewhat, but it's still there. And again, it's got the sort of the polystyrene and so on is there. Again, very similar action shot on the side. And again, all the various Terrahawks on offer there. And on the bottom is a list of details as to what Hawkwing can do there. So, it's apostrophe hidden base. I'd have never let that go. I'd have wanted to fix that. Bad grammar. So yeah, so that's, I don't know what it is about them that I like quite so much. I think it's because they've got a bit of colour to them, which a lot of spaceships and things just tend not to have. And as soon as you see the orange and grey or the orange and silver, you know what you're getting. Because no one else will do that colour scheme, it's just isn't the way of it. I mean, this is where the scaling starts getting really interesting, of course, because this Terrahawk sits on top of Battlehawk, so there's no way it should be as big as Hawkwing. But this is still a really big box just for the Terrahawk. And the Terrahawk is the command ship for the Terrahawks when they're in the field, but it's actually smaller than the Battlehawk. It sits on the Battlehawk and launches from Battlehawk. So this has got all of its missiles, which is nice. It's still tied into its original packaging as well, which is why I got one of these loose to have a look at. And it's got a very nice example of the badge there. The polystyrene is very bright white on this one. That is arguably the best example of a ship that I've got. And if you're wondering in terms of pricing, generally speaking, you can pick one of these up for maybe £80 probably. Probably less if you happen to trip across it at a toy fair. Obviously, it just very much depends on who you're trying to buy it from and under what circumstances. But because they're Bandai / Popy productions, they are very metallic. There is plastic in them as well, of course, but they are a really good quality of toy. That's not to say that elements of them aren't breaky, because elements of them are breaky, and it's the plastic elements that break, of course. That's the problem. They also tend to include a rather interesting application of stickers, because you get sticker sheets in with them when they're very complete, and the stickers often get applied willy-nilly. But the ones that I've managed to pick up, generally speaking, haven't had the stickers applied, or not too badly anyway. Now, apologies for this, the badge is slightly out of kilter on this one, but this is my most recent pickup barring the Treehawk. That is a very nice example of a boxed Battlehawk. The battle tank has definitely been out and played with. The battle tank is a little bit scuffed up, not ridiculously, and in fact I think that's more authentic because they're supposed to be played with, their toys. But it has the little Terrahawk, which is great. And it did occur to me actually, I think in my video when I was looking at the Battlehawk, I thought this was the smallest Terrahawk. It may actually not be, because there was a small version of the Battlehawk that came out on a card, I believe, and that had a tiny Terrahawk on it. So that probably isn't quite the smallest one actually. But this is obviously one of the most impressive boxes that were there. It would have looked impressive on shelves, but it's actually quite a lot of empty space and a lot of polystyrene actually. It's quite weighty. There's the side. As you can see, this one's fairly badly creased on, but that's inevitable because this is just the way these boxes were designed. And let's bring it around this way. Probably asking for trouble here because everything's going to be round in the box again, but you can see there that's the bottom of that particular box there, just showing the Terrahawk coming off the top of the Battlehawk and the battle tank being retrieved. So you can see that the coloration on the battle tank is different to what was shown in that catalogue. So somebody somewhere obviously changed their mind, as is not uncommon between the initial prototypes when they're putting the imagery together for the catalogues and the final product version. I don't think that's particularly unusual in the toy world at all. So here, for the first time being sort of properly shown to you, is the Treehawk that I picked up as well. So I've shown this before. It has this sort of nose that can pop out. Again, another badge in there, not in too bad shape, I think, that one. And a bunch of missiles for it in the top right corner there, which again is nice to have. And just a nice, I've always just really liked the look of it because it's a sort of a halfway house between an out and out rocket. And that's a really nice to get all the sort of the fully chromed rocket as well. I've had versions of this where the booster has been really duffed up and it's lost a lot of its chrome. You see the orange plastic coming through again, but this is still fastened in, so I'm not proposing to move this anywhere, but it's just nice to have it again just to complete the set. The missiles fire from underneath the wings there, so that's quite clever as well. It's quite a sort of concealed missile launcher, and used to launch from inside a tree, hence Treehawk, even though it's actually really for space. But it's just the single stage shuttle basically, which takes Hero and whoever else back up to Space Hawk when they need to reboard the space station. It's also got these little fold down landing gear as well, which is a nice little touch. But I have shown you it before loose in another video if you want to have a look at that. So nice to have that in the box. And as I say, for this video, I was keen to try and get everything in the box to show to you. And this was the first shall be last, as they say, because this is what started me on the road really to picking these things back up again, because I do remember getting this one Christmas some 40 years back, because this is just great value. You're getting 3 of the sort of the major Terrahawks toys in one box. Now, again, completely out of scale with anything else in the range, obviously, but Space Hawk, Treehawk, Hawkwing. So if you were on a budget, it meant that you could at least get your hands on something. And these are still tied into the box. Although it's missing a left flap, they are still tied into the box. So, there's enough of the box there to give you the feel for it. And because it was a bit banged up, it wasn't ridiculously expensive. So as a bit of a sort of an in to the Terrahawks range again, I had no difficulty with this at all. So there we go. So Treehawk, Space Hawk and Hawkwing in one place. Whole lot of hawks going on. And just that sort of nice logo with the very prominent Bandai. I mean, it's crazy to think that Bandai is still exactly the same logo 40 years on and is still producing things. It's just crazy, really. But that's manufactured in Hong Kong under license from Anderson Burr Pictures. Yeah, that makes sense. Good stuff. Now, this, of course, although that catalogue was suggesting that this was the entire range, actually it wasn't. It wasn't anywhere near the entire range, in fact, because those are the big boxed items that obviously would have taken up the most room on toy shop shelves. But I've also been picking up other random oddments, as you may recall. So we also get things like Hudson, which was Neinstein's own sort of Rolls Royce that he used to cruise around in. In here I've got another example of that battle tank, and another example of the Battlehawk battle tank, and the little game that was in the catalogue there as well, which as I've shown you before is actually working, and some more Treehawk missiles in there as well. And then we have the little wind-up selection as well. So we've got a little wind-up Battlehawk there. So, as I say, that catalogue is actually nowhere near showing the complete set of what was available. And there's the the nice loose Treehawk. And this one is in pretty much better condition than the original one I got. Much better chrome on the booster there, and as I've shown you before, the undercarriage is in there, and then these wings just flip out, and the missiles are here. So it's just a really nice, solid. I mean, there's weight to it. It's not all plastic at all, because that's not how Bandai rolled. Bandai were very much into their sort of their metal toys at this era still, and of course, I mean they still are. I think a lot of Bandai stuff is still quite heavily metallic, but it doesn't stop there either, because I've also managed to pick up some other sort of carded bits and bobs, and again, it's this surprising breadth of the range. So here we have a pullback wind and go Hawkwing. So, they were merchandising it remarkably heavily, and there is the Hudson that's in front of you there as well, and the Battlehawk. So that's from this range. There are 4 in this range, which I think I've now effectively got all of, because I do have a slightly wonky wind-up battle tank lurking around somewhere, although I can't immediately see it in its normal resting place, but I do have one. Then on top of that, we then also have these. Now, this is an action die-cast and plastic version of Treehawk. And again, it's a much, much smaller version of it, which is pretty much still carded. But as you can see, it's got little wheels on the bottom of it. But it's a decent example of it. And here you can see that is quite a wide range. Now, I don't know if this Space Hawk actually came out. It may have done, but I do definitely know that the Terrahawk came out, because I've got that. But this Battlehawk has this tiny, tiny Terrahawk with it. So I'm not sure I've ever actually seen that, or this version of the Hawkwing. But as I say, the Treehawk one is here. This, of course, I've got a couple of examples of. This goes mint on the card for a fair amount, so I haven't picked one up on the card, because it's been nice to grab these, but I haven't been really sort of hunting down every single last element of them, because that hasn't really been sort of high on my list of priorities. But nonetheless, I do think that as a sort of, if you wanted to collect a fairly sort of finite range, it's nearly off the card. If you wanted to collect a fairly sort of finite range of 80s toys, Terrahawks is quite a nice one to go for, because I have slightly inadvertently ended up with a really good range of Terrahawks toys. And they are, have been in varying conditions, but for the most part, they're pretty durable. So they have come down through time. They've done pretty well, really, for themselves. In the interest of completeness, I will keep going, because, of course, it doesn't end there either. This is the crazy thing for a Gerry Anderson show. Terrahawks has probably done, I would say, yeah, it's quite an interesting one, because I'm just trying to compare it to Thunderbirds and Stingray in my head. And Stingray got quite a few figures released, but they came later. And in the same way that Thunderbirds got figures released, but later, because those shows were relatively early, Terrahawks benefited from coming out at a time when toys had become sort of more... The licensed toy market had matured really rapidly, I think, with Star Wars. And I think that Terrahawks is probably quite an early example of one where the merchandise moved very quickly and came out very quickly. So you could buy this whilst the series was still active. Now, Lieutenant Hero was the last one I owed myself on a card. And all of these little figures, this sort of standard figure, comes with a belt and a little laser pistol on his arm, which is show accurate. And there aren't many of these. So there's 8 in total to collect, which I now have examples of all of. Hero I'd had loose before, strangely, but I hadn't had him on the card. Space Sergeant 101's quite tricky to get. Hawkeye is the only one who comes with a bigger gun than just his his sidearm. And actually, I think I need to double check this one because he is very loose on his bubbles, long since departing the card. But I think I might be missing a sidearm for him. And it is quite literally an arm on the side of his arm. But anyway, so those are 4 there. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, and I have mentioned this before when dealing with Terrahawks, that there is something missing here. And you would be quite correct. I think that there is something missing here. And what is fundamentally missing is bad guys. Pretty much every single episode of Terrahawks involves the evil android Zelda sending one of her minions from her sort of reservoir of minions on Mars to go and battle the Terrahawks. Captain Mary Falconer, she was quite hard to find as well. No idea why her gun's on the right-hand side of her rather than the left, but I nearly panicked last night. But I thought, have I actually got a Captain Kate Kestrel? Turned out I did have her, but she was in a different place to everyone else for some reason. Slightly torn card, but she actually would display quite well if you were to stick her back down. And again, another interesting example of merchandising with Terrahawks was she had her own single out. She sang in the show, so they had a real life lady, effectively impersonate her puppet on the show, and she released a single. So it was a strange time. But this is the only example of an enemy that we have. And it is, of course, Zelda herself. But this is it. There are no Zeefs, there are no Shrams, there is nothing. There's no cubes, nothing. So we've got Space Sergeant 101, we've got Sergeant Major 0, we have no cubes. They could have given us a pack that had a few cubes in, just for the sake of balance, but we got absolutely none of it, unfortunately. So that's all of the Terrahawks figures, all the Terrahawks action figures. But for, as I say, for a sort of a British TV show, they merchandised it really well and really quickly. And I would be intrigued to know from you watching this video whether or not you had Terrahawks toys and what your memories of the series are, because it's recently had a new graphic novel produced, it's had audio plays, it's had a new Blu-ray release, which I'm working my way through at the moment because I haven't actually sat and watched it for a very, very long time. But it's quirky, but it's actually quite hard science fiction when you sit and watch it, at least in the early episodes that I'm watching. And it's a shame there weren't actually, I know it sounds sort of a contradiction in terms, but it's a shame there weren't more toys, because the designs for some of the spaceships and the sort of the backup characters and everything else were really, really good. They were really cleverly done, as you would expect from an Anderson production. But I liked it because it had the science fiction sort of element to it far more than, say, Thunderbirds did. Thunderbirds had Thunderbird 3, so they did go into space very occasionally. But Terrahawks had, space tanks and, space stations zipping around the solar system. It was really, really inventive stuff from the very early 80s. And, these days you could easily see them reproducing it as a CGI show, and they'd have a lot of scope for doing lots of different stuff. And of course, a lot of people's memories of it are tied into Starfleet as well, which had completely different origins, but again was a puppet show based in space, but had far more of an ongoing storyline, whereas Terrahawks was more episodic. So, it was a sort of a halcyon era if, like me as a kid, you were growing up in the 80s and you liked your kids' science fiction shows to have a little bit of intelligence behind them and just really cool designs of spaceships and ships in general, So it's definitely a show I need to sort of come back to, I think, because it's got a lot going for it. So if you've never checked it out, I would suggest that you do. they control the copyright on it quite carefully, so I can't really do any clips or anything in this video, otherwise you'd be instantly demonetized. To the point where I think they even took my Terrahawks intro down at one point. I'm not sure if it ever came back actually, because you know, it was just one of those ones they kind of police quite hard for whatever, probably just because they do it for all Anderson shows, I guess. But you can catch Anderson shows on YouTube just streaming legitimately from time to time. So keep an eye open for it. I think they did show it around Christmas last year. You could actually watch episodes. So, you know, if you are curious about it, it may well be available. So hope you've enjoyed that one. That was quite a long one, but useful reference point for me, if nothing else, because now I know more or less what I've got in the collection at the moment. And if I do happen to come across any other gaps, I might try and get, you know, a really full collection. I have the annuals and a storybook, and I've also got some read-along tapes that I want to try and reproduce for you. And there are some Arrow jigsaws as well, which I won't throw in right now, but I can see one just from here. So yeah, interesting show. Pretty sort of freaky show in places when you look back at it now. Proper scary monsters at the time for a kid's show, and also some, you know, some surprising deaths and so on in it as well. So definitely well worth a look if you've got any interest in Anderson shows and science fiction and stuff of that particular era. So I will leave you there. 1010 and all that good stuff. Terrahawks codes, look them up, and I'll see you for another one soon. Cheers for now.